Is everyone having a good night? Yeah. Let's go. That's what I'm talking about. Let's pump up some energy in the room. Thanks for Robin and Shopify for hosting tonight. Really great to be here on the stage. Today I'm going to be talking about React Hook Form. I don't want to go too much into slides, so I'm going to deep dive into a project. I've made a quick demo, and I'm going to use the project as a showcase of what we could do with React Hook Form. And before I get started, just to read the room a little bit more, who here has been or is using right now React Hook Form? Nice, nice. I would say about half. That's good, that's good. I'll be curious to hear your thoughts afterwards of why you've picked React Hook Form over something else. And I'm going to get started. So hi there, I'm Frank. I was there last month presenting about Shadcn UI, and you'll see some of the components of that in today's presentation. I'm the founder and CEO of Tail. We are there to empower the next tech generation of leaders, and we're also interested in connecting with the companies section. So if you're looking to hire incredible tech leaders, feel free to reach out. I have amazing tips for you and a lot of good conversation I can share with you from that. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. So here's the demo. So before I dive too much into React Hook Form, here's the quick demo, things we'll be looking at tonight. This is a quick form. One of the things I've been looking at this presentation is how can I make like the most complex form to showcase React Hook Form in its best form. The form right now you're seeing, I've tried to use all of the components from React Hook Form. So we get like a simple application that's almost like a RPG type vibe. Try to use some fun technology. If I just go through create characters, you'll see the extent of the demonstration, a spinner, and we'll get to generate an image matching the description that we entered in the form previously. So using a little bit of DALL-E in the behind the scenes, so playing with the most recent technologies. Perfect. So everything here was generated based on the prompts and the inputs. I'm going to dive into the backend a little bit more, but the links is actually like the links to the image that was generated. And if I were to change the inputs, just as a quick demonstration, I've made some templates just to make it through easier. Let's say we want to merge something a little more charismatic, fires maybe, stuff like that. Let's see what it gets. The funny part is it looks a little bit similar with the same prompts, but always get like a nice touch variation every time. What I love about like using DALL-E in this example is we get this long generating image in the background. So one of the things React Hook Form is really great at is managing the form state. So here's is the image in the demonstration right now. So what we've seen right now in the demonstration, just if we look at the functional perspective, we submit the form is sent to the backend is generating the image. While it does so, we have a nice spinner waiting for a response, so the user is not waiting for nothing. At the end, we just have the image, and if we go back to the main screen, we can start again. So let me introduce React Hook Form quickly from the documentation. From my personal experience, when I started developing front-end and going through the motion of like doing front to back, one of the main struggles I found was managing form. Whenever you're creating like a rich application, you have to go through a lot of states management hoops. You want type validation. You want to separate the components so it's like kind of reusable as well as clean and neat in the code base. At first, when I started out, the forms were like 1,000-long pages of inputs and validation. And I thought like there must be something that exists. That's where I discovered React Hook Form. Just as a side note on last time, React Hook Form, I discovered it through Shadcn. So it was just a good extent of like why Shadcn is so great, showing me this great library, which nowadays use pretty much every day. So if we get started, there's a couple of things from the documentation. One of the things that I really much enjoy is using the controller and the use form from the beginning. There is a couple sections that I'm not really a huge fan from, which I'm going to showcase a little bit more. But the principle is use form is going to create a context for your form, which allows you to dig deeper into subcomponents. So using the advantages of React composition to create forms not in a single file, but like spread it out. So the use form is the main entry point. So if I just dive in the code just to showcase that in a more like visual way than just documentation. We have the code base, the page is the main form that you're going to see on the screen. Just as a quick example, you're going to see the usage of use form at the beginning, which is going to define the context, the usage of the form itself. I'm going to dive deeper into like the fields and everything. But that's how it all started with React Form. On the form section, if we look at like the regular HTML section, we just wrap the form with a form provider, which is going to enable the form to be controlled compared to an uncontrolled form, passing in the methods from the use form function. One of the things that you have to pass into use form in order to make it work, I'm going to have the chance to cover the resolver in a minute, but what I love is passing in default values. So by passing in default values, you specify the exact JSON data you want your form to submit if ever you don't submit anything at the end of the form. In that case, it's our warrior template. Nothing crazy, but just our like pure JSON mapping of like what's available as like inputs for defaults. So I wanted to have like this nice option. Here we can see clearly, that's perfect. One of the things that you have with default values is after that, what you want is from your JSON to have the same key and value pair on the form itself. So if I look at the form in a nicer way, we have sub-elements like the composition I was talking about to split up the form. So right now we have a file about like 99 lines. Without React Form, it would have been a lot harder. So let's say just take the control attributes, character attributes, we'll get the character name. And what we'll see is registering the form itself, we get access to the form context. So that's how we, in a lower component, access the form context. We can just register the input, specifying the key of the JSON we're talking about. And just with that information, the form is set up. So there is a lot more field than just character name. So you'll see the same structure at multiple layers within the code base. Form field, I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. I just don't want to get you confused. So you're going to see the same structure. We can go deeper with attributes with nested JSON. So we can really create complex structure with React Form, specify some of the information we're looking for. And if I go over like the other components, we'll just have a bunch of inputs everywhere, and they're all going to be registered inside the rendered form at the end. So yeah, from a normal HTML form, you get just the registration as a component. If we go back to the submission of the form, you'll see that all of that comes handy. If I go back to the page. So whenever we submit, we have to call the unsubmit, the handle submit from the React form itself. That's where all the form submission management is going to come from. So the nice little spinner you've seen is coming from that specific part. If you're not calling the handle submit, the form is not going to be able to wait and set the state properly based on the length of the submission. The unsubmit is our custom submit function. That's where we specify what we're interested in. And that's what I love about React Form. In just a couple of lines, we get our data in a structured manner. In that case, we're even using TypeScript. So we even get the chance to get the data with the types. Without that, we'll get the pure JSON. In opposition to the regular forms, what I've seen in the past was I had to use the form data from HTML, transform it to a JSON structured data. In that case, it's all going to come for free. I'm using Next.js, so there's a little bit of hacks and in-betweens from Next.js for there. But the generate image is actually like a call to the backend. And we just have to send the data to the backend directly, and we're good to go. We're going to get a response from that. The await is actually the part where the form is going to wait and give us the spinner. And at the end, whenever we complete the function, the promise is resolved, and we can move on to the next step. The state management here, I've just done a quick setup with the dialog that you've seen. So we can use the form state from the methods. Methods, if I go back again to explaining what it is, it's the actual variable that you get from calling the useForm function. So with that form state, you get in real time the state of the form whenever you submit something. So for example, you can get something like is submitting, so you're currently submitting something, or you get the submitted successful, submitted failure. You get a bunch of state like that that you can play with. The dialog has nothing crazy in it. You get the loader whenever it's actually submitting, and whenever it's rendered, the submitting is successful. You get the image that you've seen on the screen. Whenever we get to the point where we're done with the image, we can go back to the main screen. In that case, just to make it easier to manage the state and go back to a clean slate, you can call the reset function. In that case, because it's a single page application and we actually never go to another page, we never get back to the resetting state of just loading the page from the default values. So by using the reset function, in that instance, we get the form to be resetted to the current version of it. So just to go back and tidy up a little bit some of the information we've seen on the demonstration, the application, what I've just talked about, if I just select something that's, let's say, the rogue this time, so we get to see a new picture. I want to play like a new companion, let's say a panther, something fancy. Okay, we've done a little bit. And whenever I click create, we see the spinner I was talking about. So right now we're in the rendering phase of the submission. So we're just waiting for the DALL-E to give us the image. Whenever we get the image, that's why we're going to display it. And all of that is using the form, the React form state. Perfect. So we have beautiful images. We're super happy with the images. So the done button I was talking about, that's going to reset the form. So we're talking about the rogue section at the moment. So whenever I click done, we go back to a clean slate on the form, and we're ready to go. One of the sections I want to cover as well next is the introduction of a little bit Shadcn, for those who are interested in Shadcn with React form. What they've done, they've kind of rewrite the names that you get from React form. So if you used to use React form in the past, you get something a little bit different. What they've done is you can use the form fields to define the exact field you're looking for. So this is great whenever you have a form and you don't want to use the registers that we've talked about a little bit earlier. You can just wrap up the inputs you already have with this form field. And by default, you can keep the same rendering inside of it, and it's going to be controlled. So you have to pass in the control element from the form context, the name of the properties you're going to have in your JSON at the end. And with a couple of verbose elements, you get the item, you get the description and the message. You can use some of those to play with validation. We have a control form from those. In this case, it's a select element. It's just syntax options that you can get from Shadcn and React form I wanted to showcase. One of the things I want to show quickly is the backend and things you can do with that. It's going to introduce slowly the end of what I want to share with you. Whenever you have a form, one of the things I love about, I come from a backend development, things that are precious to me is backend validation. And if you're not coming from a UI perspective, you're always thinking about how can I make my application secure. It's not because it's validated from the front that I can validate in the back. And I want to avoid the redundancy of validating the data twice. Of course, the system will have to do it. I just want to avoid writing the code twice on my end. So one of the things that you'll get from React form is the concept of adding plugins, if you can call it that way. And that's where Zod comes in. So Zod, it's an extension of the React form that you'll get. That's going to give you the validation on the schema. So before we were talking about TypeScript with the data, there were no validation prior to that. We were just defining how we're going to get the JSON. There were no guarantee that we were going to get that data. With Zod, we're going to get the guarantee that we get the data in a structured manner with the data we're looking for. So the way you can schedule the resolver to work, you just have to pass in the resolver, say that it's a Zod resolver. You have a couple of other options. Shadcn are recommending Zod. I've had a lot of fun with Zod, so I haven't even looked at the other options, but feel free to check it out. The way you define the schema itself, you can use it by the factory pattern. You can specify that it's going to be an object, what are the fields you're looking for, what are the data types, what are the validation you want to put into it. You have a bunch of options you can use, and that's what makes it so powerful. So with that in place, and the Zod resolver you've seen on the front-end page, we're going to get validation. So in the demonstration, I haven't pushed too far on the validation side. I just wanted to showcase like how you would write Zod resolver validation into it. And with that comes a lot of like error messages that you can use. So by default, if you don't say anything, like just using minimum 2, you're gonna have a prompt message at the bottom of the field saying like you need at least 2 characters to make the field valid. If you have other options, you can always customize your own messages. But I would love to talk about that in a deeper way in another session. Let's say now that we've validated the front end and we have created a schema, it makes it reusable. React Form gives us the option to render the same validation on the server side using the same schema. So you have an option from Zod that's called save parse. So on the server side, if you ever pass the data you've received from the front end, you can call the save parse, and it's going to parse the data using the schema, giving you a success or failure. So if ever someone's trying to cheat and send the data without using the form, you're covered. You don't have to think too much about it. I'm not using it right now, but let me just show you the backend quickly. There's not much to it, but just to showcase a little emphasis on the data itself, we don't have to do feng shui stuff parsing the data. Whenever we get the data from the backend, we just have to use it straight away. There is nothing we have to do, plus or minus the validation at the beginning. But let's say it's validated, it's running properly. You get the data and you get your TypeScript data information. So in this instance, we get the class, we get a bunch of stuff. Let me wrap it up. It's like a little bit more visible. So that's why we can go through like the actual JSON of the data in a JavaScript manner. So I remember like using form data, and I have to do get and like get the data and try to find like ways to access my nested environment. We can access to like nested information, inventory, weapons, companions, skills, and all of that came from just the registration section in the form. It's using a little bit of DALI here and just returning the URL. And that's pretty much it. So one of the things I would love to cover in another talk, if you're interested to hear more about that or just ask me a question about that after, is validation. One of the things that I've had a lot of difficulties with at first is making sure the application is rendered in a multi-lang environment. And Zod gives us those nice prompts, those nice error message, but they're all in English. And we found ways to mitigate that. And I would love to talk about that more in another session. So that's all for me. If there is any question, I'll be happy to answer them. Voila. Hopefully, I convinced those who are not using React Form today.
Actually, not using that. I have another one. It's actually the API. It's called modular-forms, but it provides more support for other frameworks. Like same API as that one, but for other frameworks.
Mozilla?
No, it's a modular-form.
Modular form. Nice. Nice. That's cool.
It's like one of the things that you have is that it gives you like an API. So when you have like you call that, you can go on the backend. You can have you write your call and like you would do the post request for a server to do validation. Makes your API.
Nice. That's cool.
I've also been using with a new form that tanstack Tanner came up with called tanstack form. Tanstack also proper application. I've used React Form for a long time.
Nice. Nice. That's cool.
Also, you use like Zod. There's also like
Yeah.
When you have it on your client, it's a lighter version of that one. And the API is a bit different, but it's also pretty.
Nice. I love how we are creative to find solutions to not use like basic forms and use libraries. That's great. That's great.
Actually, like with the, if you want it on the client side, you could use your validate and have like your form part that like actually make all your business logic into like validator and not actually use the like the library that you talked about with all your stuff. Because validator are pretty powerful and like
Yeah. Nice. That's cool. All right. You have a question?
What is the utility of using forms in stateless?
In stateless?
Yes, I don't.
What do you mean by stateless? I would be curious to hear your thoughts.
Let's suppose we're doing deployment React on Redux. Is there any utility or?
In this case, like it's just managing forms. So whatever the application you have for stateless could be valid, I would say. It's just like whenever you have a form, I would expect you would submit it to something and save it somewhere. In this case, it's a stateless application, right? Like just get the response back. So maybe there is a use case for that. I would probably save the images somewhere, not to like pay for like generating new images at some point. But yeah, I hope answers the question. Cool. Happy to continue the conversation after. Come say hi. I don't bite, so be happy to talk. Thank you.